And welcome to Quoth the Raven. I'm your host, Louis Bright Raven, comic book writer, illustrator, and editor, science fiction writer, and been around for 27 years in the business and still going strong. And this week's topic will be discussing toxic fandom and some of the things that have been going on lately in our industry. A lot of people going a little bit crazy due to the coronavirus, and I guess they're just a little bit stir crazy or whatever it is, but it's making things even worse than usual. And I just felt like I needed to get a discussion of that out of the way. So before we go any further, let's get into our notice. In accordance with the COPPA regulations, this episode of Quoth Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we will feature is kid-friendly, the context of the episode is to address and educate older teens and adults to inform them of said content for them to research as consumers and service of their youth, i.e. parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There's the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. We're going to go ahead and go straight to the questions. So, our first question of the night is from Eric. I'm sure you've heard about the new distributors that aren't distributors that DC Comics is using to put new comics out. What do you think of that situation? Is the reaction from retailers warranted? Do you think this is a precursor to possibly opening up distribution channels outside Diamond moving forward? This particular Eric is the Eric who runs my local comic shop, Eric Woodard, and he runs Scratch and Spin, pop culture, collectibles, record store, comics, stuff like that. He himself did not pursue, as far as I know, the new distributors. For those who don't know, because Diamond has been on lockdown, shut down due to the coronavirus, DC Comics chose to do a sort of distribution through two major retail outlets, Midtown Comics and DCBS, who are running under different names as distributors now. And they've only got a few of DC's books. Diamond's still carrying those books and will distribute them at a later date when they reopen. And as far as we know, there won't be any other companies that are going to those two parties to distribute books. At least it hasn't been announced yet to that effect. The retailer reaction in general online has been something adverse. They think that DC's cheating them because these are two of their major rival mail order businesses compared to brick and mortar. And it was done in such a quick manner of time that there wasn't really time to properly set it up. And there's a lot of, business-wise, there's a lot of reasonable apprehension on behalf of retailers, although I do think many of them have gone a little bit over the top with their expression of their concerns. Mm-hmm. As for whether or not it's a precursor to opening up the doors to new distributors, I really don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is pretty much because of the reaction that we just saw from retailers, not only with the Comics Hub thing a couple of weeks ago, but this situation as well. and the fact that every time we turn around for the last 20 years, 25 years, uh, anytime there's been any type of alternative distribution open, the retailers have thumbed their noses at it. So I really don't think it's a precursor at this point. I would like to think and hope that it will eventually make people think about it seriously and work towards building real distribution again in our industry. But I don't think that this is. I don't think this is. I guess it's a step in the right direction, but it's not. It's not the thing that's going to drive it home. Okay, I don't think. I hope it is, but I don't think it will be. Our next question. Anonymous. What would you be doing if the coronavirus had come about before the rise of the internet? Well, basically, I guess what they're saying is, what if this had happened back in 30 years ago, where we were all stuck at home and didn't have internet to interact with each other on? Myself, when I think back of that time, 80s, early 90s, chances are I would be writing or drawing comics. I'd still be in my house, I wouldn't, or my apartment, college apartment, whatever. Wouldn't be much different than now per se. In fact, I'd probably be more productive in some ways because the internet's very much a distraction as anything else. So, in some ways, I think a lot of us would be more productive in the long run in that sense. Yeah, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be either writing and draw my own books, or I'd be reading stuff. You know, that's pretty much it on that one. Next question is from Miguel in Illinois. He asked, "What was or is your favorite era of Marvel and or DC Comics?" Uh, hmm. I would guess probably around 77 and 90, 1977 and 1990. That'd be basically from the time I was 5 until I was 18. Um, I think since I got into business a couple years later and I started seeing how the sausage was made, so to speak, my um, my understanding of what was going on with the comics and my perceptions of comics changed once I got into the industry. So there's that. And there was a lot of things going on in the late 80s, early 90s that I didn't like in the industry. Um, so, it was kind of like what's going on right now in a way, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, I would say that the situation for me was more during that 13 years period or so, because I quit reading comics at age 10 and I picked them up again at age 13. And then I discovered more books at different times, um, throughout my life in different ways because of accessibility and because of what my interests were. Um, Whereas after I was in college, I had the mass accessibility to comic shops, multiple comic shops, and I could pretty much pre-order anything I wanted and stuff like that. Um, that plus coupled with me doing my own books and being in the industry, um, it changed how I looked at what I bought and why. And I won't say it made it less fun, but I guess you could say I lost some of the youthful innocence of it, of collecting it just for the sake of collecting it for fun, reading, because I wasn't enjoying the comics as much at that point as a reader, because I saw all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes that kind of um, put a little bit of a distaste in my mouth, I guess you could say. So I would say that era, 77 and 90, and I guess that would be um, early Bronze Age to Copper Age. Well, about middle of Bronze Age to Copper Age, I guess you could say, would be the general thing there. Next question. It's from Debbie in Michigan. She asks, are you looking forward to seeing Stargirl on a DC network? No, I'm not. I'm looking forward to seeing it eventually, yes, but not on DC Network. I don't have DC Network. I'm not spending money on DC Network just to see it. Like with Titans and with Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing, I'll get it on DVD, presuming that it will be collected on DVD at some point. But I hope it's good. I hope that the people who are watching DC Network or have seen previews of Stargirl do try it out. I'm sure it's going to be a pretty good series, if not an excellent series. I remember reading the original 13 issues that Jeff Johns, the creator, did with Lee Modair, and I enjoyed that. And this looks very faithful to that material, and so hopefully we'll see some entertainment on that front. But again, I don't see the sense in buying DC Network or whatever it's going to appear on, just to watch that sort of thing. And I'm not really into watching reruns of stuff all the time. So eventually, but not through DC Network. Mm-hmm. Next question is from Kevin T., one of our original viewers from Chicago. He asks, have you ever considered pitching a project to Heavy Metal Magazine? Why or why not? Well, I don't think I have. I don't know why, if I haven't, why I didn't necessarily. But I think there's been times where I've thought about it and didn't, because I didn't really necessarily think I saw eye to eye with who the directors were, whether it was Kevin Eastman or the new party. I can't even remember who it is off the top of my head. I looked at what they produce or what was being produced, and I wasn't always sure that my stuff fit. But I would not say I would never completely rule it out. I just, when you're working in comics, you want to try and produce something that's suitable to the audience you're pitching for. So with heavy metal, it's kind of like you need, I don't know if I want to say adulter or having nudes or something like that in the story. I don't know. I just don't think I've had anything that really immediately makes me gravitate towards that magazine. But nothing wrong with heavy metal. I do occasionally buy it and enjoy it, but maybe somewhere down the road. I don't know. Our next question is from Ryan S., another one of our early viewers. He asks, or he says more actually, you should do a pitch a week. Tell the world what you would do if you were writing this book or that, like you were pitching to the publishers. Maybe if the right people saw it, they would hire you to fix the comics they've messed up. That's that's amusing, Ryan. No. First off, to do a proper type of presentation like that and do a pitch like that takes a lot of time and energy to put into something, especially when I know that Marvel and DC aren't likely to pick it up. And because of my past history with Marvel, of them accepting projects and then never releasing them, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But I appreciate the notion of it, and that you think that things might change. I don't know. And I would rather tell the stories that I knew weren't going to be accepted or were already rejected. Maybe I don't know, but really, when it comes to Marvel and DC, especially, I'm really not that interested in pursuing future stuff with them. More of a creator-owned talent in that respect. So I know a lot of fans would like to see me do some stuff for Marvel and DC, but I won't say I don't fit in. I just don't see where I fit in these days, whether it's because of age difference or ideological differences or whatever. I don't really connect with Marvel or DC characters like I used to, and I don't see where I would be necessarily a good fit as a writer for most of those things. Not that I couldn't write the characters, but it's kind of like a situation where, okay, if I was doing it my way, maybe. But why would they let me do it my way? I'm not a big name person, if I were a big name person, it'd be a different situation altogether. But we'll see. Maybe I'd rather do my own characters though. Let's see if there's anything else for the questions. Yes, Jeff Morris asks. I know this doesn't really fit with the topics you usually talk about, but you have talked about wrestling on past episodes. And I was wondering what your thoughts were about how the indie companies are handling their shows. No audiences, no in the arena, and stuff like that. They're handling it as well as possible. I don't really get to watch that much wrestling anymore. My preferred what's the organization, New Japan, isn't on in America anymore thanks to Impact Wrestling Company buying Access TV. I don't watch Impact. I can't get into that show. They got good wrestlers, I guess, over there, but I don't know, I'm not into it. WWE is fine for what it is. I like the fact that Drew McIntyre got into be world champion for a while now. But AEW's AEW. I mean, they're kind of a low rent WCW. That's how they feel to me. They don't really have the star power yet. But they might be a lot bigger and have a lot more fan base than I realize or anybody realizes, especially the last month or so, where we haven't been able to see how the fans are really reacting. We see, TV ratings and stuff like that, but that doesn't. TV ratings are one measure, but having fans in the seats that are genuinely interested in the product and how they react to the performers makes a difference too on how any company proceeds in that business. So, it's kind of a weird situation for everyone, but I don't mind any of them. It's there. And Jasper asks, do you think the comics industry would be in the same level of peril as it seems to be right now if there were no coronavirus? Well, technically, yes. I don't think there'd be an awareness of it. But the reality is, for a long time, we've only been um, one, you know, whether it's a pandemic or, I mean, what if Diamond had been hit by the main warehouses? Diamond got hit by a tornado and your warehouse is wiped out. Then what? You know, any type of situation that would cause Diamond to shut down um, in the way that it has would cause this type of a situation. And I wish that more publishers and retailers would acknowledge this and look towards doing something about it other than, well, let me go do something with a mail order company, but really rebuild the distribution channels. They need to be rebuilt. But in that respect, you know, yes, we are in that. We've always been in that kind of a perilous situation. The question would be whether or not anyone would acknowledge it and correct it. And if the coronavirus or some other instant like that, it would, unfortunately, it's going to take something like that to at least get people to put it on the table and say, okay, we need to talk about it. But hopefully, this pandemic has opened enough people's eyes in our industry to make them look towards not a short-term answer like DCBS or Midtown with their little sidebar goings on, but legitimate um, distribution. Um, we'll have to wait and see. That's our questions for this week, I believe. So if you have questions, you can email them to Quoth the Raven, LBR72 at gmail.com. Subject QTR questions. Pardon me. And please indicate whether or not you want your name and locale read on air. Now, pardon me. I'm changing the topic a little bit, and or not changing the topic. We're going to get to the topic, I should say, and that is: would you like to have some cheese with your wine? Toxic fandom, and I'm going to try and be direct to the point and not be too ranty about this, but because we're not going to do much more than talk about this tonight. Didn't really have time to put together a full show this week, unfortunately. Some people that I had planned on having as guests, unfortunately, had to bow out at the last minute. So we're just going to go with it and see where we go. The world was already crazy, but the not jobs came out in force this week. We've already talked a little bit about the retailers and industry experts spending the past week freaking out over DC Comics' decision to distribute through Midtown Comics and DCBS, albeit under new distributor names. Like I said, we've seen a lot of retailers just really fly off at the handle at DC. Brian Hibbs, Joe Fields, Barger again, quite a few other people. Eric himself had expressed. Eric was more civil about it, but I think a lot of retailers are being civil about it, probably, and just saying, "Well, I'll just wait," rather than worry about getting a new account. at the last second to try and get a handful of books, that a lot of which have been delayed for the last few weeks anyway. They're not really new books per se. I mean, they're new books in terms of they haven't been released to the public yet, but they're not anything to get the entirety of the DC line up to speed with their schedules. And they're not going to do that regardless, even if they were to have a monster turnout from the retailers with these two distributors. It wouldn't do that because first off, Diamond's got a lot of stock sitting in their warehouses. And the other thing is because we did the pencils down situation with a lot of stuff, even though DC did have creators going back to work to try and get them back on schedule, that still is like a week or two of people not doing anything. So, and as far as I know, most of the, Brian has made a big deal of, the DC offices aren't open. Brian needs to understand that DC offices don't need to be open. Everybody can work from home telecommunications wise between creators and editorial. That's not, you don't have to be in the offices to function in comics publishing these days. It helps, but it's not a necessity. I think though that with that whole situation, there's a level of toxicness in terms of the overreaction of some of the bigger name retailers, like I said, Hibbs and Fields and stuff. They're trying to be leaders of the whole crew, and of course, media that the so-called comics news media always goes to them and uses them as pundits instead of talking and doing real research to see what the overall feeling and thoughts of the retail community as a whole really think. Because I don't necessarily think that these people that are high profile are necessarily representational of everything that the comics retail community thinks. Because I see a lot of comic book retailers who are kind of like, isn't this excessive? Yes, we understand where you're coming from. We kind of agree with you, but aren't you going over the top? And rather than, but they don't say it publicly and they don't confront the bigger name retailers because they don't want to show a non-united front, if you will. They don't want to show a discombobulated-ness, I guess you could say, of the retail community, because it is quite dysfunctional and broken up in different ways. Mark Andrew Smith says, this is something interesting I saw this week. If you want to talk about it, that I posted to Facebook. Maybe after things open again. I've been saying that the comic shops are going to need to become more like Mama Banks, places you can go to and sit and just read as many books as you want by the hour. That is it's a type of restaurant, not restaurant, but type of establishment that is very common in the Asian markets, I believe, over in the Korea and Japan and the Philippines and stuff like that. That's when you say manhwa bangs. For people who don't know what manhwa, that's the Korean version of manga. Mark continues. Then it should be half Starbucks and also have a cultural element like board games, art classes, and murder mystery dinners. That's an interesting concept. I could see some retailers doing that that are already kind of leaning in that direction because you're like James Symes' Isotope already has a bar in it, and there's other things. But once you start bringing food and drink beverages into that business, now you're talking about needing different licenses, different health code um, checks and balances, a lot of things that a lot of comic book retailers really in this country are not going to want to deal with, in my opinion. I'm not saying your idea is wrong, Mark. It's not a bad idea. I think I don't know that that would necessarily appeal to the others, to the general community of retail. I think that if that was going to happen, we'd almost have to have a whole new contingent of new ownership and new stores to do something like that. Mark asks, do you think that DC and Marvel are using this time to get books ahead of schedule so they're more quality, or do you think they're thinking of dollars and furloughing people? Both. There are some that they're trying to get ahead on schedule of, and then there's some that they're saying, well, these books aren't that important. They were going to be part of this quarter, but because we're doing this now, we'll push them back a few more quarters. And if we're going to push them back, we can furlough those creators in the meantime before they need to get back on the schedule. That's what I've heard. Mixed messages. So I think ideally, if DC and Marvel were doing it right, everybody would be looking towards getting books ahead of schedule. Quality is, that's in the eye of the beholder, as you know. But yeah, as far as just getting books ahead of schedule, you'd think that they would do that. But like I said, I've already heard a lot of people getting pencils down type. And they got the pencils down orders and then haven't been told to pick them back up. So that's the same with being furloughed. So, but there's that going on. But yes, I like the idea of having, kind of what you were talking about with the places you can go to sit and read books, comics, whatever, as you want by the hour. That would be a very interesting, different type of place. And, but I don't know. Culturally, we're a little bit different in America. We don't seem to really embrace reading in the same way that the Europeans and the Asian cultures have, because the Europeans have something very much like the manhwa stores, but they would. I think Americans would probably go, "Well, isn't that a library? I can go to the library and get them for free." Type thing, but that's why would I go to a store and pay for it? Type thing, because they just don't understand the culture that comics has globally. I think one of the most what I'd love to do if I had the money to do this once all this pandemic stopped, I would globetrot and start doing a regular program where we could show people what comics is in different countries and show the different cultural ways that are presented and what comics is represented as. For example, you go to Japan, you get comics in a vending machine on the street corner or at the bus stop or train depot or whatever, and you don't see that in America. When you go to Europe, they actually have multiple museums of comic book, just like the history of comics in France, the history of comics in Italy. There are places of that, and I just would love to see that stuff myself. Just as a comics fan, I would love to experience that sort of thing, and then share it with everybody else here in America that doesn't know that, so that we could get a sense of what it is and bring that to America, because America is supposed to be this melting pot, and we, it's like we don't do that anymore. It's like, I don't know, it's crazy. Yeah. I read that article. I knew what you were getting at. Yeah, there was a pizza delivery place where they can deliver the pull list of books, and pizza's too messy. No, I don't want pizza anywhere near my comics. I'm sorry. Just. I'd like a little bit less greasy, less messier food with my pizza, or with my comic books myself. But that's just me. I've actually, and this is funny because I have seen many a store do pizza parties at the stores. Every once in a while. And like when they have a guest creator there, they might have a pizza party for certain guests to, after the regular signing, they get to have an extra special time with the creator, or, it's just the creator and the a select few employees or whatever. And I've been there and I've done that, and I'm just like, just not pizza. I'm sorry. Well, that's just me though. That's cool. But yeah. Number two, more and more quote unquote comics fans have taken to speaking their minds on social media about how they can't go on being fans anymore because of social justice warrior this, or the big two don't care about their loyal readers anymore, or the big two are just targeting fresh new audiences. And I'm going to give you guys an example of that in just a moment. But before I do that, Mark says, it's probably going to take school tours to get the younger generation in the medium in elementary school, where a writer and artist to show up with books and teach a class and then offer them. I don't know about that. You don't necessarily need professional creators doing it. I mean, 25, 27 years ago when I was in college, part of what I had to do to get my teacher certification was go to the schools and do my observation for art and English classes. And I used comics that way, and I was nobody. And the kids not only enjoyed what I brought to the class room, they gravitated and said, well, where are you going? I tell them, well, I'll be at the store after school, at from here to here, this time to that time. And the kids would bring their parents right after that. So I think that, while you could do that sort of a thing, I think any creator or anybody who's an educator that likes comics and can draw or write can coordinate with a library or coordinate with a school to introduce the medium to students as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying is a more extensive brand of stuff like that, but I don't really. You're talking about mega corporation, Marvel, DC doing that more than anybody else, and I don't see them caring, because why should they care when each of the Marvel movies and each of the DC movies makes more money individually in box office than the entire comic book industry. So in a given year. Pizza and comics don't really mix for touching things with grease. No. Something like the Scholastic Book Fair. Well, you could do a Scholastic Book Fair with it, but I think you can do an educational element. Just, I got to do like a 20-minute presentation 2 weeks in a row, I think, out of a 15-week thing that I had to go to the school. And then I got to let the kids make their own little mini comics in the school. And I went and printed them all up, the kids' mini comics, and distributed them free to the other kids. And then we took them to the local comic shop and sold some and put the money towards the art department, so that there would be art supplies at the school back then in the early 90s. And I was going to Central Michigan. There's other ways of doing that as well. But I mean, if you wanted to try and get the big companies like Scholastic, then you're getting Big Nate and you're getting Raina Telgemeier and you're getting Jeff Smith. But again, you're these people are high profile, but they're already touring. They're already actively engaged. I don't know if you could really do that to the extent you're talking about completely. Extensively throughout the country, consistently. This is, it's going to take to do it at that level of size. It's going to take a massive effort on a lot of major corporations, and I just don't know if they're in that mindset right now. Whether they should be or not, that's I think you being a teacher yourself, for those who don't know who Mark is, he is a English as a second language teacher for adults. He's taught overseas, and he's also the creator of many comics. He's been a guest here on this show. You might want to check back season 1, near the end of season 1. We did a episode with Mark about his variety of his works. There's it's a good thought. I just don't. I think we'd have to do it on more of a grassroots level to start with than expecting the corporations to do it. And there's enough creators in the business who are teachers on the side, who have people that are in their lives who are librarians. People like Joe Thompson. Trying to think of his name. It's Steve something. Oh well. But his wife's a librarian. There's people in the business that we could do that with. But I think we'd be doing it in pockets at first before we could get a real mass movement going. But getting back to that that situation with the crazy people why they're talking about why they're no longer a fan. This is a very popular video right now. This is a 30-year-old fan who's known as Dizzy D, and she's from the UK. And I got halfway through the video because we don't need to go through all the Marvel stuff that she's whining about. She says you need to watch the interviews with the creators and what they have to say to understand what she's talking about. You don't. Let's just go from here.
But this is what the comic book industry standard is becoming, and I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I feel like all they're trying to do is bring in new, fresh blood, and they're completely and utterly forgetting about their old, loyal comic book readers. I feel like every comic book writer is trying to ram their political agenda down your throat.
Okay. Let's think about this for a moment. When has there never been a time when they weren't trying to bring in fresh new readers and push out the older established readers? They've been doing it as long as I've been alive. If you think about it, when Julius Schwartz created the Silver Age, the idea was to get rid of the Golden Age and reboot all these characters. That was because, well, the people were aging out, and we want to get new, younger readers in. We got to bring in new characters, or tell new stories. And it took 2 or 3 years before the old guard fans were saying, "Oh, well, bring back the Golden Age. We want those characters back. We want them back. We want them back." And of course, they did bring them back, but they didn't bring them back fully. It was Earth 1 and Earth 2 with DC type thing going on. But, and then it happened again in 85 with the Crisis of Infinite Earths, where they were merging all the different Earths again. And they got rid of certain historical elements of the past of different other Earths going on. They rebooted Superman with John Byrne. They rebooted Wonder Woman with George Perez. They rebooted Green Lantern. They rebooted character after character after this. And there was fan backlash. So much so that DC actually said, well, there's the real Superman, and then there's whatever John Byrne's doing over there. And, after about 2 years of not being supported by the company, John Byrne left that character because they weren't really honest. So here's this 30-year-old woman saying this is something that's new, and they're trying to shove their ideology and their ideas down our throats. What the heck do you think they were doing in 85 through the 90? They were doing the same thing. What do you think they were doing when they killed off Superman? And when they broke Batman's back? And when they turned Hal Jordan crazy and possessed by parallax, and he kills off half the Green Lantern Corps, and he gets replaced by a young punk kid, Kyle Rayner? What do you think they were doing in the 90s when you were a little girl just getting introduced into comics yourself, where Diana was working at Taco Wiz and had given up her ceremonial garb as Wonder Woman to Artemis or some other character, I think her name was Artemis, who had, this long flowing ponytail, longer, like 6 miles wide, dragged behind her. I don't need a magic lasso. I can whip it around with my hair. That's the one that gets to wear the ceremonial costume while Diana's running around in the black lycra, spandex biker shorts and top with a jean jacket over it. I mean, it just, that was when I was just starting getting into comics as a professional. I'm in my early to mid 20s, and I'm getting alienated by that. That was only 7 years later. And that was pushing me out as a reader. I quit reading DC because of that stuff. But I didn't sit there and scream about it and go, oh my God, they're trying to get fresh readers and they're leaving. I spent all this time following these characters. I just said, okay, if this is what you're going to do, I don't want this. And I left. I went looking for other things in comics. Was there a political agenda pushed? Of course there was. Go back and look at the books. I'm not going to cite examples for you. Go back and look at those early 90 comics. It's all there. Wide open. Why did they kill Superman? Because there was going on. They wanted to marry off Lois and Clark first, and then Warner Brothers said, no, you can't do that because the people who are making Lois Clark TV show want to do that in the TV show. You can't marry him off. So they killed off Superman just to spite them more than anything else. And, you know, I mean, it was kind of petty. So, you kill off the character, you give me 4 fake Supermen. No, not my thing. Easy means to step out. Breaking Batman's back and having him replaced by a character that, why is this guy getting picked to be the successor? Just things going on at that time that were very alienating. And it wasn't just in the characters. She's talking about, stuff like New Warriors, the New Warriors that are coming out now. The screen time character, the Snowflake and Safe Space characters, saying, well, this is all SJW political stuff. Well, go back to the original New Warriors. Wasn't Night Thrasher an SJW? He's a black Bruce Wayne, 19-year-old street punk, but he's Bruce Wayne wearing armor, and he wears a face mask, helmet, and he has a skateboard shield. I mean, doesn't that sound just as goddamn stupid as Snowflake? When you think about it? And, because Nova had been around since the 1970s, and they brought him into the original New Warriors. They called him Kid Nova first to try and throw everybody off and say, well, he's still a teenager. But he wasn't. It was still Richard Rider. But, we got to make him sound like he's the new guy instead of this old dude. Because in reality, he should have been an old dude, if you think about it, because he was a teenager in 77, 78, 79, when that book was originally coming out, Man Called Nova. Here it is, 90, 91. He should be in his 30s, which to me, if he was, it wouldn't have made any difference to me. Just make some of the other characters a little bit older. Namorita can be older, some of the other characters, you have a different, they don't have to be all the same age, but they made them that way because that was what they do. So, it's the same thing over and over. So why bitch and be toxic about that and say, well, you're trying to drive away old readers? Well, I picked up New Warriors. I was an old reader. I enjoyed it. I picked up the revamp of Guardians of the Galaxy by Valentino in 90 because I was looking for something different. The skateboard, exactly. And his name was Night Thrasher. Night Thrasher sounds like someone who's having bad nightmare dreams. He's thrashing around in the middle of the night in his underwear or something, it was a bad character, but he was the only one that was kind of an original of the characters. All the other characters were from other comics from the past, in the team. So it was like, oh well, but I didn't mind it, and that's, I think that's what, today they're like, well, we're not even going to give it a chance. It's just going to suck. Well, maybe it will. But when you stop and think about some of the stuff, and I've mentioned this in past episodes because people have been making a big stink about this New Warriors thing for the last few weeks. Safe Space is not a bad character idea. The idea of a character who can only develop force fields to protect other people but can't use it to protect himself, that's an interesting dichotomy. It's an interesting, I don't want to call it a weakness, but it's just different than what we would expect from that sort of thing. And there's a potential to do something with that. The screen time character, everybody makes a stink of the internet gas. I don't know how they're going to execute it. And because I don't know how to execute it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to be well done. But common sense tells you that an easy way to transfer nanotechnology or nanites would be through a gaseous substance. So why can't what's actually in him? He's got a bunch of nanite technology that he inhaled, and that's what gives him his powers. It's not the gas, it's the nanites. Now, I don't know if that's what they're actually going to do or not. It's what they should do, in my opinion, but that's just me. It's what I would do. But then I wouldn't have said internet gas. I would have said nanotechnology transferred through a gas, just to be more clear, but, that's me as a writer. But let's get back to her rant, if we will.
And it's all about equality and diversity and everything else that was written on the board in the Star Wars trailer. But I just think that they're missing the point. They're missing why people love the old characters so much. And yeah, we're sick of reboots. We had a great thing before. We had a great storyline. And when we're finished with that character, you should make new, exciting characters with new storylines. They need to go through the hero's journey.
Okay. She's right. On this part, she's right. So, finish your old character stories then, like I've been saying, and start the new ones on the hero's journey. She's got that part right. But it's not about, well, we love these characters. Because do you love these characters? Yes, you're sick of reboots. You're sick of whatever. It's like saying the X-Men. Take the X-Men stuff that's going on right now. They got them all on Krakoa Island, all resurrected. Every X-Men that ever lived, every mutant that ever lived, or whatever. And some of them are soulless now. Because they're not really themselves. It's just a recreation of them, or whatever. But it's kind of dumb because the whole point is characters are supposed to die. Characters are supposed to stop being active adventurers so that we can move on to the next generation of heroes. You can't do that if you keep rebooting. You can't do that if you keep retelling and bringing characters back from the past. And the reason that stuff keeps getting done is because the creators today, for the last 35, 40 years, have been wanting to retell the stories of their youth. And they wanted to fix what their predecessors did wrong instead of going on and creating something new. And part of the reason they do that is because the dynamics of our industry have changed. If you want to do something that's your own characters, why would you do them from Marvel or DC? You do them creator-owned, where you own all the rights, so that you aren't screwed the way Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all these other great, amazing creators, Bill Finger, Bill Everett, Wally Wood, just a ton of people that created those characters who didn't get anything out of it financially the way that they should have. And since there's an awareness of that, a lot of creators don't want to give them that. How do you get creators to do that? And the reason I think this is what you got to do, you sign on to Marvel, especially if you sign an exclusive deal, you should be required to create certain characters and hand them over. That's part of your deal. You have to create X amount of characters that we approve of and that we're going to use, and we own them. End of discussion. You're going to get your cut, but you're not going to get like what you think you're going to get. You're going to get a little bit of things. And Mark's responding to the video. I think it's suspect because she mostly does cosplay and video games with very few comics, and she's regurgitating Comics Gate talking points for clicks. Average views for her videos are 3,000. This is 55,000. Well, the reason that it's 55,000 is because everybody on Facebook is bringing it up, and you know who's bringing it up. It is the CG guys. It is Chuck Dixon. It is different people that are CGers. So their people are watching, and that's why it's got that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen this video, but certain people who are CG that are people I not so much follow, but I'm aware of, happen to put it in my news feed on Facebook. Otherwise, I would have known about it. 55K moving up. So it seems like she's cashing in as a pretty face for the voice of Comicsgate. Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of people like her in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, that are saying this, that they feel like they're being left behind by the new regime. But the thing is, this is what is supposed to happen. You are supposed to evolve out of superhero comics into the rest of what comics is if you're going to stay in the hobby, and let the next generation of characters come in. And the problem is they haven't really, anytime they want to do new characters of any kind, there's a bitch fest going on. And this is not just recent things since the Comicsgate stuff. This has been going on. When they did Avengers Academy 5 years ago. They were bitching about it. When they did Runaways, they were bitching about it. Now they're talking about this whole new outlawed. All the teenage superheroes in the Marvel Universe are outlawed, and you have to be approved of by the government. And that's what this new Warriors thing is. They're being mentored by the old team so that they can be official adventurers. And I'm kind of like, okay, didn't we already do the whole superheroes needing to be registered with the government and have a civil war over that? You're recycling what you've already done. And I think that's part. No one said that I've heard of. I'm the first one who said it that I know of, but there's probably other people who have said it. But this is why people aren't liking it more so than the characters. We've been here, we've done that. Do something else. And that's the thing. Whether it's New Warriors version 1, 2, 3. This is like the 4th version of New Warriors. The Runaways, Champions, Avengers Academy, X Academy. We've seen this trope over and over and over now, to the point where you need to come up with something different than just a group of teenage superheroes. What are you going to do to make them unique in the Marvel Universe? And you can't just do that by making a character a binary or a they/them type person, or a person who is I'm trying to think of the word. Transgendered, but also I'm trying to think of the word for it. I can't. They're transgendered, but their sexuality is like they're asexual, but it's weird. Yeah, but that's what they're trying to do, is just find as many weird combinations of things to say, well, this is what makes them unique, and that's not what makes you unique. You got to be more than one little trait does not make a character, and that seems to be the problem there. But what I was saying though with this particular person, yes, she's been like the public face of this, but there's a lot of more videos like these where they're saying, well, we've been left behind. And the thing is, you haven't been left behind. There's still plenty of comics out there. So, the choice is to move beyond that and find new characters to enjoy, or walk away like I did 30 years ago. Not 30, but starting 30 years ago, 1990. 1991, once Claremont was forced off the X books, is when I was starting to dropping Marvel and DC titles, as the creators I enjoyed were getting forced off the books and bad storylines were coming up. I walked away from Marvel and DC as a reader, and I've never really returned to it. Not to say I don't read any DC, I know I often say I take kind of like a badge of honor that I haven't bought a Marvel book since 2003. I don't say that as a badge of honor. I say that just as a point of fact, of reference for my audience to understand that it's been that long since they've really done anything that appeals to me enough to want to pay money for it. That doesn't mean that they haven't done anything of any quality. It just means for my money and my interest, they haven't done anything. So, it's kind of that situation where the toxicity of fandom is they're buying it and complaining about what they're buying. And they're trying to make it a badge of honor. Well, I can't be a fan anymore if I can't enjoy what I'm buying, but I'm going to buy the book still and complain about it. Well, then you're not a fan. I don't know what you're doing, but you're not a fan anymore. And you were never really a comics fan. You were a fan of a certain character or a certain brand, and that's okay. But when that brand changes, it's okay to walk away from it too. And no one should be ridiculing you for it. I think we're going to stop with her and kind of go into, if I can find it here. Yes. Something else that whoops, sorry. Here we go. The retailers can't keep their stories straight. Either everything is going to hell and they're about to lose their stores, or they just made $250K selling their backstock out. All the while bitching for the past 2 years how they couldn't sell any backstock. Make up your minds. What I mean by that is some of the big, and we're talking about the bigger guys again, people like Dennis Barger. I'll go ahead and share his thing with you if I can get it to share. I said $250,000. He made more than that, I would presume, but who knows? But it says here, Dennis Barger just sold 250,000 comics in shutdown. What that means is he sold 250,000 comics to whoever he sold it to. It doesn't matter who the buyer was or buyers may be. It doesn't matter what the amount of money was he sold them for. I don't care if he sold them for a penny a book. But he sold them. And he's making a big stink out of it, and yet for the last, like I said, 2 years, he's one of the biggest names in complaining about everything that Diamond does wrong, everything that Marvel does wrong, everything DC does wrong. When you do that and you have that dichotomy, it's like, okay, why are you complaining? You've made your money. There's that, and there's also, the sense of it's not just that sale, because that was just one sale he sold all those books for. For the last 2-3 weeks, almost every single day, he's been on his Facebook page. I sold $800 worth of stuff here. I sold $300 worth of stuff there. I sold $500 over here. I sold $600 over here. I sold $150 over there. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, dude, so you've sold all your backstock. Good job, Dennis. Who gives a shit? if you're selling all your back stock, all that proves is that, okay, either why couldn't you do this when things were normal? Why now? What's the big difference now? Why couldn't you market this content that you had? Pardon me. Market this content that you had when we had normal, everyday comic services. Conversely, we got Brian Hibbs again, who's got his Shopify store or whatever store it was, 5,000, almost 6,000 trade paperbacks. And all he's doing is bitching, well, I can't be a mail order person because I'm not making any money on it. And it costs too much and I'm not going to make any money on it because I got to pay because the shipping and handling is this much, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of looking at his prices, and his prices are either cover price or up. There's no discounts on anything on his stores that I saw. So everything's cover price or higher. Plus, I got to pay the shipping and handling on top of it. Yeah, I don't see why very many people are going to want to buy stuff from you. If you're that desperate for money, and your store is under threat of closure, then wouldn't you be selling your product even at a loss just to get that stock out of your store and revenues of some amount into your store? These kind of behaviors by these retailers, again, these are high profile people that the comics news media is making a big stink out of. I don't know if this is really representational of the whole of the comics industry, but it's just showing a sense that these retailers don't really know how to properly function as businesses, either during the pandemic or in normal times. And it's kind of a weird thing. It drives me crazy because I see 15, 16 different things going on here. I don't know if I can. Okay. I'm going to see if we can do something here. They're saying Michigan's unemployment rate is 25%, which is where Dennis is located. Highest U.S. Unemployment rate, limited welfare coverage, stuff like that. Customers no longer coming by a store, unemployment and job insecurity, reducing disposable income. Amazon not doing things right, whatever. Like he says, you can see the pallets of comic boxes that he's making a big deal out of that he sold. And really all it is his backstock that he couldn't get rid of for whatever reasons. So he got rid of them. And he found a sign, which, okay, whatever. You can tell that's an old one. It's population of a Spawn there, and Spawn hasn't been really of any major notice for how many years now. But, that's the thing, though. When we have these sort of things going on, yes, Michigan's got some stuff. Michigan's always been kind of rough, especially since when they closed down Portsmouth Air Force Base up in Oscoda area where I used to live. They affected that state. They traumatized the state. It's never recovered from it in 30 years because they closed it in 90. Well, they announced closure in 90 and officially closed it in 93. So we're talking 27 years ago. and it's just never really recovered since. The entire upper third of the Lower Peninsula and the entire Upper Peninsula of that state is just financially devastated to begin with. And then he's in Detroit, which, that's where all the money that the state does have goes. So, it's kind of a weird thing to say that he's having trouble, but whatever, I think more people just need to realize that you can make a living with a comic shop. And right now, a lot of people have been buying comics left and right from their local comic shops, buying curbside, buying mail order from wherever. And, it's nice that Dennis Scott found some buyer that was willing to buy a bulk. Maybe someone else wanted to open another comic shop somewhere in the state. Who knows? But the success is hustling, and I see a lot of people, there are people here in Columbia that I know who buy 5 to 12 collections every single week, that size, and rotate it and sell it on eBay. So, and don't even have a storefront. So, that really, it's, they want to make a big deal out of it, but it's really not that big of a deal. So, they want to show you off that and say that's your great thing, or they're telling you that they're dying. Well, you can't be, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I wish more people would do that. Just be honest and be more in the middle. Number 4 is everyone's bemoaning the demise of comic conventions due to coronavirus regulations, yet both retailers and creators are actually making more money doing online shows and selling to fans at home. And that's true. I mean, every day I see at least 20 different comics retailers in my feed that are doing online sales of stuff. And they get hundreds to thousands of viewers each time they're doing it. And they're selling all this stuff at auction. And I can guarantee you that if we had comic book conventions going on that they could attend, they wouldn't be selling these books like this, because they would have them, first off, they'd be at different price settings, probably higher price settings, because they'd have to cover all the expensive travel, cost of everything for the convention that you aren't paying for when it's right there in your store and you're just on the internet. The other thing is they're not, everything's just relatively simple, as far as that goes, and straightforward. Whereas at a comic convention, I have to rifle through all your back stock to figure out if there's anything I want. I could be there for a while, but there's other people around who also want to look at everything. There's other vendors to go see as well. So, you might not get the sales that you're getting on the internet the way things are going now. And as far as creators, I've been watching a lot of people doing commissions and doing YouTube and Facebook video, doing their commissions for sketches online, showing everybody what they're drawing. Aaron Lepresti has sold out almost as many, he said, what was it? Either his last episode or the episode before it, he said the art book he just had printed, he's almost already sold out enough books to pay for the printer bill. I think he said he only like 40 more to go before his printer bill is paid for it. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, because he's only done, like 4 or 5 videos where he was advertising that. And normally it would take him 4 conventions before he would get that kind of sales. So yeah, he's having to pack it all up and ship it out, instead of giving it direct to people. And you miss the camaraderie and meeting people in person and stuff. But in other ways, it's much more interesting for fans, because when we're at a show and an artist is doing a commissioned sketch, well, if everybody wants to take a look, imagine having to flip the book around and show everybody how far you are every time, over and over and over again. This way you get to watch the whole process of us doing the sketch. So it's kind of a cooler version of a convention in some respects, in that way. So I think it's helping some creators. Now, it doesn't help all creators. I mean, I haven't done that. In fact, I think I'm going to maybe start doing that this weekend if I have time, but I don't know if I will or not. Where I'm going to try and sell some of my older material and online, and I'm going to try and do some live sketches and stuff. We'll see. We'll do some other things, like, get some fellow artists and do a panel or something. But that's almost a daily thing now, and I see probably 70 or 80 different artists doing that now. So I don't really see where they're hurting yet, because people are making money other ways. I think what we're missing is just the interaction with people, because we creators are always at home anyway. So, we do like to get out of the house and go meet people and have people fawn all over us and say how great we are. We need that every once in a while to let us know that we are loved. But other than that, that's kind of what a convention's for in that respect. And again, I've done this before with Chicken Little. I said Chicken Little is running free, screaming that the sky is falling yet again, and can somebody strangle that little bastard and get it over with? Basically, it's that kind of a thing where we keep saying comics is going to die because of different things. It's going to die because of digital comics. It's going to die because conventions are being canceled. It's going to die because we don't have distribution. Well, we could have had distribution right along. Our retailers rejected every option of having different distributors. Hopefully they'll learn from this and start building that up. I think we've seen that we can go without conventions and still be successful and still have income coming in. There are things you miss, and you miss community. And hopefully, as we've seen all this complaining and the people saying, well, it's time, I can't be a comic book fan anymore. You can be a comic book fan. You just have to choose to be a fan of a different type of comic. Like I did. Like I said, I left Marvel and DC years ago, and I wish there was a way to make all the DC Marvel stuff the way I liked it. But the fact is, even if they were doing all those characters the way I would envision them being done, there'd be a lot of people out there who wouldn't like my vision either. So I just kind of look at it as, you find the ones that you want and you follow them until they're no longer the ones you want, and you move on. But comics, being a comics fan, it's not about, I'm a fan, I've been reading this book for 30 years. I've been reading this book since it first came out, however many years ago. This is my favorite character, or whatever. It's about loving the art form and always looking for different permutations and versions of that art form to be entertained by. That's what makes you a comic book fan. And a comics fan is even bigger than comic books because of the web comic, because of comic strips, because of different political cartoons. This is all comics, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're really a comics fan, all of those things interest you and entertain you. You're going to like some things better than others, and that's okay. And there's going to be some things you just don't like at all, and that's okay. But you don't need to make it like, if it's something you don't like, that it shouldn't exist. Or, I can't stand this. I can't, you can choose not to support something, but you don't have to say, well, the whole industry's ruined because, we got a character called Snowflake that throws ice throwing stars and ninja star shuriken, and has a mohawk, or and thinks that, and they're whatever their sexual gender is or isn't, it doesn't matter. Just don't buy that book. Find something else to read. There's plenty of them to choose from. And this week I'm not going to do reviews because we're already at an hour and a half in, and I didn't really have time. And so next week we'll make up for that, folks, and we'll try and get some guests on again. I know a lot of people really appreciated last week's show, so we're going to try and get as many different people as we can coming and going in the weeks coming up. So, that's pretty much all I've got to say with the toxic fandom. Is, the easy way to clean up your toxicity is to just not constantly complain about what it is you don't like, and talk about what you do. And, there's a lot of stuff out there to like. And hopefully, next week I can start bringing that back out and start sharing some more stuff that I like, and hopefully you will too. So, let's see what we got here. Yes. My computer is being fussy again. Sorry. I'm going to close on out tonight and say again, this show was rated TV 16 and up. And hopefully everything will be working pretty well tonight. Got some stuff going on here with the computer being fussy again. I apologize. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at Facebook at lewis.brightraven, DeviantArt at deviantart.com/brightraven, here on YouTube at Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven, Gmail, if you want to send me questions or make suggestions on topics for future episodes or something like that, you can reach me at quoththeravenlbr72@gmail.com or at Yahoo at lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. The podcast is usually running on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so, give you guys a safe and healthy weekend. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully, we'll have a little more positive stuff to talk about. I'm going to try and find some cool stuff to review on social media for, crowdfunding and stuff like that. And we're going to see who all we can bring in that hasn't been a guest on the show before. Okay? So until then, we'll see you next time.